How confident are we feeling about the bench this season? Why aren't the Raptors rebranding? What does Elijah Martin do that Ochai Agbaji doesn't? That's all in today's mailbag.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your favorite part of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Raptors your first listen every day. I'm Vivek Jacob. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for 8 seasons across several outlets. You can follow Locked On Raptors on X, Instagram, and YouTube, and be sure to check out the Locked On Raptors Discord, where you can talk all things basketball, but especially the Raptors. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. It is Thursday, July the 17th. I'm going solo for the mailbag. Thanks to everyone in the Discord sending your questions in. Remember, if you want to get those questions in, you got to get in on the Discord. The link is in the description. So let's get right to it. Matt_T asks, if the Raptors young players win the Summer League championship, perform well at training camp and in preseason, would you feel more confident in the bench? So I'll start here in terms of like this whole confidence in the bench. A lot of it, I think, is stemming from this talk of bench mob 2.0 and thinking that they're all going to play together at the same time. I don't think that will be the case. So I really think it comes down to what type of bench units we see and how they kind of mesh with the starters. And that's going to be a big part of the Raptors' secondary lineups this season. So, who is supporting these bench units? So if you have a lineup that has maybe Jamal Shed, Jacoby Walter, Brandon Ingram, Colin Murray-Boyles, and Jakob Poeltl. So now when I'm viewing Shed and Walter and Colin Murray-Boyles in this lineup, I'm saying, okay, you're taking care of some of the potential half-court concerns that you're seeing with these guys in Summer League by saying, hey, you've got Brandon Ingram who can handle late clock scenarios, who can just go get you a bucket. You've got Jakob Poeltl setting all these screens. So that scoring pressure in the half court is off. You think about Jamal Shed making these passes to Colin Castleton that aren't getting finished right now. If he's dumping them off to Jakob Poeltl, then for sure that's, you got a pretty good chance of a bucket there. So I think it's about these lineups, right? Another lineup I was thinking of as an example, you could have Emmanuel Quickley, Ochai Agbaji, Grady Dick, Colin Murray-Boyles, and then Scotty Barnes at the 5. So if you want to go a bit for that small ball, you can have CMB with Scotty as the 4-5. Then you've still got some good shooting between IQ and Ochai and Grady. And then you've also got enough, I think, defensive protection across Ochai and CMB and Scotty for, IQ and Grady. So I think it's going to come down to that fit amongst the starters and how that meshes with the bench units. I don't think we're going to see, full out bench units. I think that would be a big mistake. Again, you look at the starting 5 and the options that the Raptors have there. You've got IQ, RJ, Ingram, Scotty, Jakob Poeltl. In most scenarios across the 48 minutes, you should be able to have 2 of those 5 out there on the court. And so I am very much thinking about the bench as like, hey, which 3 players at all times can complement those 2 starters. Now, another thing that this question made me think about is just, who are you looking at in terms of giving the most minutes to? Who do you maybe have the most confidence in giving minutes to? And just how will the rotation dictate who gets minutes? So I think Jamal Shed is kind of in a class of his own because he is the backup point guard. There's no one really challenging him behind him. and he's going to have to get minutes, right? So I think he is like a guaranteed backup, solid. He's going to get his 15 to 20 minutes a game, and I think that's going to be guaranteed. So he's kind of in a category of his own. And then I think you've got Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, Ochai Agbaji, Colin Murray-Boyles, and Jonathan Mobo in the next tier, where you expect them to get minutes, but it could also be very situational, and it could very much come down to just performance in that game, who is having a hot streak during that week, or whatever it may be. And so, hey, if it's a matchup where Grady Dick is struggling to compete defensively, then maybe he doesn't get much of an opportunity, and it's Jacoby Walter seeing extra minutes or Ochai Agbaji seeing extra minutes. Colin Murray-Boyles, he's going to have his rookie moments. He's going to have moments of struggle. Is that a time where Jonathan Mobo gets more of a look? I think those are situations that are going to present themselves across this category. Jacoby Walter might have a night where the shot just isn't falling at all, so you lean on Grady Dick a bit more. Maybe you lean on Ochai a bit more. So I think they're in kind of a mixed category of it's just going to come down to performance. And then below that is, I would put AJ Lawson and Jamison Battle and Sandro Mamukelashvili. I think those three guys, it's going to be more situational. It's going to be dictated by potentially an injury. And it's going to be a situation where I guess you'd probably say Sandro has the clearest path, because Lawson and Battle are having to get in front of several guys, whereas Sandro, it's just straight up, hey, do we want kind of a stretch option out there at the 5? And he's the only one who can do that. So those three I would put in that tier behind, but at the same time, I could see with Sandro, if there's situations where you're saying, hey, you want to get that stretch option next to a Scotty, you want to get that stretch option next to maybe a CMB, depending on what the lineup is. That's where, Sandro's path is probably clearer than AJ Lawson or James Battle. And then obviously we got Garrett Temple just being dad, just being coach on the sidelines, and probably figuring in when there's a blowout situation, or again, you never know what injuries may bring. Next question, Muggsy asks, is the lack of rebranding or the cry of bringing back purple from the fan base ignored due to either the lack of creativity from the front office or the perceived cheapness from the owners of pulling off a rebrand? Or is Muggsy overthinking this? So looking at the most recent example of a rebrand, you'd point to the Orlando Magic. That's a good example. They brought back the pinstripes. They brought back, the star on the logo, on the name. And I think for the Raptors, so just quickly with the Magic, like they've got this established core now of Banchero and Wagner, and obviously in terms of rebrands, it takes some time. So this was something that would have been planned a year ago, maybe 2 years, and now it's coming to fruition. And so they've got this core established. In the Raptors case, they've been in this transition, they've been in this rebuild, and now obviously above the roster, you've got this big change. We'll have to wait and see who's the president. You've got front office contracts lined up for until the 26-27 season. So I could see a potential rebrand coming the year after, or even 2 years down the line. I think that's something that could figure into the equation, and saying, okay, this is really a new era where, we've made all these changes, and this is how the Raptors present themselves now. And then we'll have a clearer picture on who's going to be part of the core down the line as well, right? And of the starting 5, we'll see which maybe 2 or 3 are still in the mix, maybe 3 or 4 in the mix, a couple years from now. So I think that probably has the most to do with it, and just having that clarity. As much as, Keith Pelly is saying, oh, there's all this stability and all that, I think there's a chance that things could look very different in a couple of years. And even as far as the rebrand is concerned, for going into this very next season, I think there's a lot of people who would still view it as Masai's team, and that this is still the roster that Masai built. And so maybe once you transition away from that and have that full, well, maybe not full, because obviously, like, you'd like to think that Scotty and whatnot would be in the mix, but once you transition further away from Masai's team, then maybe that's when you see a rebrand. At that point, will purple come into the mix? That's a tough one. I'd love to see the purple back, but it's almost like they might have this vision of it's an exclusive color and pattern for them to keep and sell on the side, whereas they keep the red and white top of mind and as kind of the mass sales product. And at the end of the day, the Raptors have they feel like they've struck gold with this whole, being Canada's team. And from a branding perspective, I don't necessarily see them going away from that. And I just see them continuing to try and appeal in this way. So, yeah, I think that is a good place to leave it for that question. Coming up on the other side, we will get into some underrated skills that we're picking up on at Las Vegas Summer League. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. They have an AI agent that handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. We are back, continuing with the mailbag. Nico asks, what underrated skills are you seeing from some of the key Summer League guys? Nico, you spotted little flashes of playmaking from Ulrich Chomche. I think you're probably referring to the big highlight that he had where he gets the block, runs the floor really, really well and makes that beauty of a pass to Colin Murray-Boyles for the jam. If not, you've probably even noticed that Chomche's had some plays where he gets the ball at the elbow and he's making these bounce passes to cutters for finishes at the basket. And I think that is something that bodes well, speaks to his reading of the game and understanding of the game that's coming along. I think that giving him those opportunities to develop and be a part of plays and understand how he can impact the offense outside of scoring is really important for his growth. And just overall, that reading and understanding of the game, we have to maintain perspective here because William Liu from the Hello and Welcome podcast made a great point where he talked about how, remember last Summer League, Ulrich Chomche, there was a game where his shoelaces came untied and he was literally asking the referee to stop play so he could tie his shoelaces. Like, we all know that's not going to happen, but he just had so much to learn, and it shows just how inexperienced and raw he was. And so to show that type of growth in the span of a year where he also had an injury, a significant injury, I think it speaks volumes about his potential, about his passion for the game, wanting to learn. So that's super encouraging. So, yeah, there's been these little droplets of playmaking that we've seen from him. The one thing I will say is, when he gets those opportunities at the elbow, probably likely that at the NBA level, they would just back off him, dare him to take the jumper, prove he can hit the jumper. And when they're backed off, it takes away those angles for whoever's cutting to the basket, right? There might not even be an opportunity to cut. And so that would then become the challenge. It's like, hey, can you knock down these 12 footers, 15 footers, whatever it may be, to have your man up on you enough, and then the basket's empty for players to try and cut and create opportunities for themselves. Another player, Jamal Shed. So and I've already discussed this earlier, but it is sort of a little thing that I've noticed with him, is when opposing players are in a deep drop, how are you able to punish that when you don't have the jumper falling? And so it's about getting into the paint. It's about building that runway, taking advantage of that runway and getting into your floater, getting into a push shot, a runner. And I think that's something that we saw in the Denver game. And that's a little thing that could go a long way for him. As I mentioned, shot 41% between 3 to 10 feet. And so that's something that I would like to see over this next game. And if the Raptors play beyond that at Summer League, if he plays, we'll see about that too. So I think that's a little thing with Jamal Shed. With Jacoby, this might sound like a big thing, but I think it's something that that could have a big impact on the team, but it's not something that you necessarily expected from him coming into Summer League. Personally, for me, it was about, hey, attacking the basket, having that, creativity to create scoring opportunities going towards the basket. But what I'm noticing is his willingness to take the pull-up three. And if you remember the first game of Summer League, he starts off with a pull-up three in transition. And, that was very much, it felt like, hey, I've been working on this thing. It's my new shiny toy. I want to show it off the first chance I get. And he takes that three, and we've seen more of it as the games have gone on. And obviously, he was on fire with it in the game against the Denver Nuggets. He missed a couple towards the end, which I think were just heat checks. So the 4 of 11 3-point shooting, I'd say was more like 4 of 9 if you take away the heat checks. But I think that is something that I'm looking at and saying, okay, if this is something he can add to the Raptors team, because there's not a whole lot of options on the Raptors who can do that. Right now, it's just Emmanuel quickly. We'll see how willing Brandon Ingram is to take that. And then you put Grady Dick. So if he can add himself to that list of pull-up three shooters, then I think that would be a big gain for the Raptors, and just a little thing that I've noticed with him at Summer League. Next, I'll touch on AJ Lawson. I think he is someone that we recognize as showing great speed on his drives to the basket, and that's where we really see the speed. But I think I'm noticing more of it on the defensive end. And obviously, the Raptors want to apply a lot of ball pressure, and he's been doing a good job with that, applying the ball pressure. But I think he understands he's fast enough to be intense with the ball pressure, but then also recover when he needs to. And I think he's shown better recovery, even if he is getting beat. And I think that's an important development for him. I think that if I were to draw a bit of a comparable, think of Gary Trent Jr. when he was getting those steals and deflections. And I'd say that it was pretty much all or nothing with Gary, right? Like, if he gets the steal, if he gets the deflection, great. But if he gets beat, he wasn't someone that could really recover, right? He didn't have that speed to him. to actually recover, and then the defense is having to kind of save him, collapse, and that's where you get yourself into trouble. So AJ, I think that's a little thing where when the ball pressure doesn't necessarily work out, I do feel like he is recovering better. This transitions well into the next question. JLo6701 asks, how does AJ Lawson stay on the roster? He feels like one of those guys who every now and then can make a big difference. There will also be games where he might be unplayable. I think the biggest thing for AJ is consistently knocking down the 3-ball. I broke down his shooting splits from last season. For the year with the Raptors, he shot 32.7%. But, when I broke it down, he just had a small stretch where he was at close to 50%. And then everything else was actually under 30%, and even as low as like 25%. So I think that's a big focus for AJ in terms of being on an NBA roster. I think he just has to be consistent with that shot. 32.7% is too low for what he brings to the table. Realistically, I'd say he has to be in and around 37, 38% to really have value from beyond the arc. And then I think that changes how you view him as a player as well. So I think that's a big thing for him. The other thing I'll add is his strength. I think he's someone who, when we see him in Summer League going up against, I'd say, more college level bodies as opposed to NBA level bodies, he's able to initiate contact. He's able to take contact. And that's where, it's part of him able to just consistently get to the line. And I think that's something where he's 6'6", but he's 180 pounds. So realistically, at that height, you want to be, 200 plus, I'd say. But if there's a way for him to work on his strengthening, I think that would be something that would be really, really helpful. And so, yeah, the shooting, the strength, those are probably the two big things that I'd highlight for him moving forward. And then going back to the earlier point about the defense, if he can have that ball pressure plus recovery in him, then I think that bodes really well. To finish up, we are going to get into a bit of a debate on Alijah Martin versus Ochai Agbaji. And we'll talk a little bit of Shamshay because why not? Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Having all my accounts in one app has been a game changer and is just so much easier to figure out exactly what I'm doing with all my money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We're ready to wrap up here, getting into Barney Bass's question. What does the 6'2" Alijah Martin bring to the Raps that is better than what the 6'5" Ochai Agbaji does? Do you see any minutes available for Alijah as the shooting guard behind RJ, Jacoby, Ochai, or is he destined for the G League? So what can Alijah do better? He can take off from the semicircle or even behind it better than Ochai. I will give him that. I think, the pop he's shown on his dunk attempts so far, that's probably something that Ochai, even with his athleticism, can't really compete with. I'll say Ochai is obviously we saw the shooting come a long way, so you'll give him the clear edge in that regard. I'll say that Ochai is a better cutter. He's attacked closeouts pretty well this past season. I will say that Ochai is a good defender, a solid defender, but not a great defender. So if there's a path for Alijah, it's in being a better defender, even though he is smaller. Obviously, he's got the size, he's got the strength, rather, to pose problems for opposing guards. And I think that that's maybe a potential area where he has the higher ceiling. I think overall, I'd say Martin has, from the little I've seen, seems to have better quickness than Ochai. I think Ochai, when he's defending on the perimeter, sometimes his lateral quickness can be found a bit wanting. And so that is maybe an area where Alijah could be better. Now, overall, when you look at these two players right now, Ochai is, you'd have to give him the respect and say that he is the better player for sure, without a doubt. And I'd probably lean towards Chucky Hepburn and Alijah Martin being the starting backcourt for the 905 and trying to work their way from there and just develop accordingly. Now, another thing that Alijah could bring to the Raptors down the line is just the salary cap relief. And I think, when you look at the Raptors having some salary cap issues to confront moving forward, that's part of why we've seen RJ in trade rumors, IQ in trade rumors. Ochai is extension eligible. He could potentially be viewed as surplus to the rotation. He's making $6.4 million this season, and he'll be a restricted free agent next season. So I think this is going to be an interesting year for Ochai in the sense that we know that he's going to have a lesser role. Obviously, there was a lot of opportunity to be had last season, so it's going to be a lesser role. What does he look like in that lesser role? And not getting consistent touches. Will the shot fall at the same rate with that being the case? Can he come in and, was last season a fluke with the 3-point percentage? That's going to be a challenge for him to prove coming into this season. That's another thing that we have to see. So overall, the raw stats will come down, but will the percentages? We'll see. And then that could affect his contract negotiations after that as well, right? So I could see the Raptors very much being in a position saying, hey, we don't necessarily want to offer an extension here, because if your raw numbers are down next season, your 3-point percentage won't matter as much in terms of the negotiation, right? It's like, yeah, okay, you shot the same percentage, but you also didn't have much volume. But if you shoot poorly and you have the low volume, then it becomes like, okay, last season the shooting numbers were kind of a fluke, and you make a decision from there. You see where Alijah Martin's development is at, and then you make those decisions accordingly. So yeah, you'd have to say that Ochai is the better player, but in terms of managing contracts and all of that, Alijah Martin could be a play to kind of have a cheaper option who does some of the same things. And also, if that spot is not going to take up many minutes in the rotation, then you might as well have it be someone who is more cost effective. And so if the rotation focus ends up being just RJ and Jacoby Walter and nothing much beyond that, you can slide Grady Dick to the 2 at times, depending on the matchup, and depending on, the other players on the floor alongside him. Then there just might not be room for Ochai at, 6, 7, 8 million, whatever the extension ends up being. So yeah, I think it's more of a long-term play, but right now you definitely give the edge to Ochai. Locations Drew asks, Shomche? Question mark, exclamation mark, all of that. Obviously, the question came in before the episode with Blake released, and I thought Blake and I had a fun chat about Mr. Farm Boy and getting excited for what he's bringing to the table. But I thought we were also right to, cool the jets a little bit and understand that Shomshe realistically needs the majority of next season with the 905 and just continuing to develop and get big minutes there. And then I think he could potentially come around and get Raptors playing time in 2026, 27. What I will say is, man, he could be in for an awesome 905 season. Like, you could get really good value watching the 905 play next season. Obviously, the tickets aren't very expensive to watch the 905. And if you're going down there and you're watching Chucky Hepburn and Alijah Martin and Ulrich Shomshe, that could be a lot of fun, right? And so I think that's the fun aspect of next season. And besides that, I think we can pretty much wrap it up there. This is kind of a shorter episode, but with all these recaps coming in and not too much else to talk about, I appreciate the questions, but look out for the recap on the Warriors game that'll be coming up next. If you want to carry on any of this discussion, head on over to the Locked On Raptors Discord. Link is in the description. Thank you for making Locked On Raptors your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast, where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.